Good day, grade 12s. My name is Carden Madzokere, and I'm the author and publisher of the Distinction-Bound Student Textbooks. In this particular video, I'm just going to go through public sector as we prepare for the exams, just talking about all the things that you might need to know about public sector. So we start with the composition of the public sector. So here we're saying, what does the public sector consist of? So the public sector consists of, number one, central government. So this is all your national level, in all your departments. So that would be, let's say, the president, deputy president, all the ministers in different ministries. All that falls under the central government or national government. A good example, besides what I just gave you, is Department of Basic Education. So I'm going to use education throughout all the four, stages. Right. Number two, that will be your provincial or regional government. So your provincial government, an example there, if I start with Department of Basic Education, that would be maybe Gauteng Department of Education, GDE. So the first one I say DBE, Department of Basic Education. That will fall under the central government. When we say provincial government, we can say something like GDE, Gauteng Department of Education, Free State Department of Education, Mpumalanga Department of Education. Okay, then from there we go to local government. An example in education with local government, I can pick a specific district, something like Tshwane South, Tshwane West, Fezile Dabi. What's this one in Limpopo that I went to recently? I know Sikukune, I know Waterberg. Yes. So all those are examples of local government. Now that's your local municipality, everything like that. Then the last part of our composition will be our state-owned entities. Well, there are a couple of them, but you don't necessarily have to know like all of them. Just have a few examples. The easier ones, that will be your South African Post Office, your South African Broadcasting Corporation, your Eskom, Transnet, examples like that. Right, we move on to number two. So number two, we're talking about the necessity of the public sector. So here we are saying, why is the public sector necessary? Like, why should we even have the government? Okay, so there are a couple of reasons. Number one can be to avoid market failure. Now, we said market failure is failure of markets to allocate resources at an optimum level. So government's other reason is for avoiding that from happening, to ensure that optimum resource allocation is achieved. Now, I'm not going to go in depth as to how they do it because that's another topic. The next one will be provision of public goods and services. Now, we all know that public goods and services are non-excludable. They are also non-rivalry. So because of that, we find that the government is necessary. Then the other one is the problem of externalities require government intervention. So government, for that reason, has to intervene to deal with those externalities. We have positive and negative. They have to subsidize if they have to. They have to tax if they have to. Okay. Now, the next one will be the provision of merit goods. Now, this is done to broaden the social benefit. The other one is to do the opposite of that, which is to discourage demerit goods. We all know sin tax. That's a way in which government can do that. And then the other reason why government is necessary is for the prevention of monopolies or to encourage competition. So in South Africa, we have the Competition Act, where three bodies were enacted. Like we have the Competition Tribunal, Competition Appeal Court, and the Competition Commission. Another reason why government should exist is for the redistribution of income and wealth. Now, the South African government, amongst many things they do, they use a progressive income tax system to try and bridge the gap so that the gap between the rich and the poor is a bit narrow. Right. Another reason is to manage the economy. Our government will make use of policies like the fiscal and the monetary policy. They do that they are managing the economy. So for that, we see that the public sector is actually necessary. The last reason I'll give you, which is number 9, that will be to protect natural resources. Now, they have ways in which they do this, and that's more environmental sustainability. The next question is number 3, where we talk about the state's macroeconomic objectives. Now, I have a mnemonic for this to help you remember. So it goes like EFEP. So we have E, F, E, P, and E. So E, that's your economic growth. So government intends to achieve economic growth. This is an increase in the production capacity of the country. The next objective is to achieve full employment. That means everyone who's willing and able to work must be able to get a job or create employment for themselves. The next one will be price stability. Well, government intends to achieve this one by making use or having a target, which is 3 to 6%. Now, the Reserve Bank is the main institution tasked to deal with price stability. In other words, to ensure that inflation does not go beyond the target, which is the 3 to 6% band. Then another objective will be exchange rate stability. This one also is more like the Reserve Bank's, goal. Like, it's one of the things that the Reserve Bank tries to ensure that they do, which is to protect the value of the rand in relation to other currencies, so that the rand does not grossly depreciate its value in relation to other currencies. The next one will be economic equity, like to achieve equality in the economy. That's one of the things we even talked about when we were looking at necessity, which was number 2. The last one, I said E, F, E, P, E. Okay, so that was that. That's the last one. Then we move on to number 4. On number 4, we now look at the budgets. On the budgets, we have the main one, and then we have what we call the medium-term expenditure framework. You'll see it just now. So the main budget, let's see what you would write here. The main budget presented by, that would be the finance minister. So you either write the name of the finance minister or you write by the Minister of Finance in February. Well, to be more precise, the first Wednesday of the second half of February, that's when it's presented. So right after Valentine's Day. So we have the main budget presented by the finance minister in February each year for the next fiscal year. So then we become curious. What's that? Like, from how... I'm sure there's a question that talks about that. Yeah, I remember I put it. Right, then number 5. On number 5, we say what is a 3-year rolling budget. Okay, that would be the medium-term expenditure framework, MTEF. Now, it's usually confused for number 6. So number 6, that will be your medium-term budget policy statement. So now this one is a government policy document that communicates to Parliament and the country the economic context in which the forthcoming budget will be presented, along with fiscal policy objectives and spending priorities over a 3-year expenditure period. Then on number 7, we look at now the fiscal policy. This is the question that I was saying, yes, it's there. Now, that one runs from the 1st of April to the 31st of March the following year. So we call it the fiscal year. Right, now what are the functions of the government budget? Number 1 is to allocate resources. So you can just write the allocation of resources. The number 2, it's for the distribution of income and wealth. Yes, so a budget tries to ensure that wealth is distributed fairly so. They have ways in which they try to do it. And then I just don't want to go in depth with that. Then the last one, that will be stabilizing the economy. Then we move on to the budget principles. So what principles should the budget, follow? Okay, number 1, that will be transparency. Yes, that's why it's presented in Parliament on national television. So transparency, that's number 1. Number 2, that will be participation. Number 3, accountability. And number 4, equity and equality. Right, then number 10, where does the government get its money from? Like, where does it come from? Well, it comes from many sources. Tax being the main one. Right, so you would write the personal income tax, you can write corporate income tax, you can write also value-added tax, then customs and excise duties, levies, and many other ways. Fuel levy, sin tax, all that stuff. Right, number 11, a 3-year rolling budget. Well, this question is repeating. I apologize for that. That's the medium-term policy. That's the medium-term expenditure framework. Now I'm saying medium-term policy. Right, then what are the problems of public sector provisioning? Well, the mnemonic I made for this one is PAPAPE. PAPAPE. Okay, so the first P, let's start with privatization. A, that's accountability. P, that's parastatals. A, the problem of assessing needs. So assessing needs, that's the A. Then the other P, I'm forgetting now, what did I say, what did I not say? That'll be the pricing policy. Then the last one, that'll be efficiency. Okay, I can repeat. I think I started with privatization, accountability, parastatals, assessing needs, pricing policy, and then efficiency. Okay, so these are the problems. This one used to be a possible essay type question. Right, then we go to characteristics of the fiscal policy. Now, the fiscal policy is number 1, goal bound. Number 2 is demand based. Number 3, it is cyclical. Then number 14, we have the composition of the fiscal policy. Like what does the fiscal policy consist of? Well, we usually then say 2 things, which is tax and government spending. But here we're going to add government debt. Yes, government debt is one of the compositions of the fiscal policy. It's not just those 2, because the government, when they draw up a budget and they see that they need more than they have, they'll have to borrow. So they can borrow the money from individuals. They can borrow money from the International Monetary Fund. They can borrow money from the World Bank. They can borrow money from other countries. Okay, so government debt is another thing that consists the fiscal policy. Then moving on to the effects of the fiscal policy. Now, the effects of the fiscal policy, we have number 1, income distribution. Number 2, consumer spending. Number 3, stimulation or discouragement of certain sectors in the economy. And then pricing level. And then lastly, labor productivity. Then what are the key features of the public sector failure? Okay, the first feature will be ineffectiveness, and then we have inefficiency. Then here you are asked to draw a Laffer curve. So with the Laffer curve, you need 2 axes. Like any graph that you draw will have to have those axes and a set of axes. So first, the vertical axis will have your tax revenue, meaning the money that government is making. Then the horizontal axis will have your tax rate. So your tax rate, you will have it from 0 to 100. Now, what you need to show is something that goes up and then it begins to go down. The reason is, as government starts to, as you go from 0% to 100%, as government starts charging some tax, they start making some revenue. So revenue begins to go up. Now it goes up to a point where now it begins to discourage people from working. So the tax revenue begins to drop. And it drops all the way to 0. So what 0% first means is if government charges no tax, they make no revenue. That makes sense. The other 0 comes when government charges 100% tax. They make 0 revenue because no one is willing to work, and then government takes all of it. Okay, so basically government makes nothing if they charge 100% tax. So the Laffer curve is like that. All right, then after the Laffer curve, let's have a look and see the next question. So the next question says, explores the relationship. Okay, yes, that's the Laffer curve. So number 18 is explaining what you were drawing on number 17. All right, then we go on to the reasons for public sector failure. Like, why is it that government fails? Well, the first one, on this one also I have a mnemonic, and the mnemonic says something like, let me see if I didn't forget. My little brother plays soccer at Sundowns. Yeah, my little brother plays soccer at Sundowns. Yeah, it makes sense. All right, let me see. That would be management failure. Little, that would be lack of motivation. Brother, that would be bureaucracy. My little brother plays. That would be politicians. My little brother plays soccer. Okay, soccer will have structural weakness. Soccer at that's your apathy. Sundowns, that's your special interest groups. Okay, so just try to remember my little brother plays soccer at Sundowns. Now, this one is a possible essay type question. I'll talk about it in depth when I'm doing possible essays. Then the last portion of our public sector will be the effects of public sector failure. Okay, now the effect of public sector failure, I have a mnemonic again. I call it DESA. Okay, so your D, that's your distribution of income. Your E, that's your economic stability. And then your S, that's your social instability. And A, that's your allocation of resources. Well, thank you so much. We'll go in depth with data response questions for public sector. Thank you. God bless.